Hey everybody, as promised, here is the video for your rocket kit. First of all, you should have picked up a packet, looks like this, from the school. And when you did that, you probably grabbed your mousetrap collar and a glue gun, hopefully. Some of the other things that you're going to need for this at home is a pair of scissors. If you have a glue stick like this, it would be great, but not necessary. Again, if you have some wood glue or just some Elmer's white glue like this, it would be helpful. Again, not completely necessary. In a pinch, Scotch tape or masking tape even could help out. Some of these things just make it a little bit easier when you're making your rocket body and putting the pieces all together. Make sure that you read through your booklet. There is a lot of information. It tells you step by step how to do it. On page 4 and 5, there's an inventory that shows all the different pieces. They're all labeled the way that they're going to be talked about in the video, in the book. And also, on page 15, there is a template for the fin and for attaching the parachute and everything to the rocket body, and we're going to talk about that, come back to that in just a few minutes. So the first thing that you're going to need is the piece of white copy paper. This is going to start building the tube for your rocket. You have a clear tube that looks like this in your kit. Be sure not to glue or stick anything to this. This is not actually part of the rocket, and you are going to need this again in your next project once your rockets are all done, and we have another set of project kits for you to come pick up at the school. So you're going to need this, you're going to need your paper. And the idea here is this is going to help form the tube that's going to become the body of your rocket. Starting with your paper along the edge of the tube, you want to roll that paper around the tube as tight as you possibly can, trying to keep the edges on the top and on the bottom as even as you can. The tighter you make this, the stronger and easier it's going to be to work with your rocket. If you have a glue stick like this, this is the best way to glue this down. If you don't have this, and you do have some kind of a little liquid glue, you could put that glue in here and smooth it out. And if you don't have either, a few pieces of Scotch tape holding the ends and the middle down would be good too. I'm going to use this glue stick, and I'm just going to put a little bit along the edge of the paper. Be careful when you do this so that you're not getting glue all over your table or your counter at home when you're doing it. But we want to just go along the edge and we're going to slide that around, pinch it kind of tight so that that tube is nice. You should be able to slide out the plastic tube. Okay. Again, the plastic tube is not part of the rocket, and you will need it again for your next project. So after that, it's going to tell you to wrap the paper around it, and the paper that they're talking about is this red stuff. And if you remember back from the egg drop, we had this, the brown side gets sticky when you get it wet, and then the red side does not get sticky, and that's the side that you're going to see. The first step with this is to cut a section of this off that is the same length as the white paper that you just did. And when you do your wrapping, make sure that you're wrapping this the long way. Okay? Hot dog style if you want, rather than hamburger. We don't want the shorter rocket, we want a longer rocket. So make sure you're wrapping the paper that way. The easiest way to do this just lay it onto the red paper. Take your scissors and give it a quick snip. And then once you have that, you can just cut it straight across. Okay. If it's a little long, that's okay because we can trim it down later. If it's a little short, we're going to go over it again with another layer with the remainder of the paper. So just try to get it as close to the length of that white paper as you can. And then I just have some wet paper towel here. If you've got wet paper towel at home, if you've got a wet rag, you could use a sponge. In the booklet it says use a sponge, but wet paper towel is fine. And you're going to take and wet the brown side of that paper. And then take your tube, your white paper, put the seam so that it's going to get wrapped with the brown and red paper. And then you're going to, again, the long way here, just make sure that you got it nice and wet. And you're going to wrap it tight again. And you want to get it as tight as you can. The tighter you get it, the stronger your rocket and the easier it's going to be to build. You'll see that it doesn't go all the way around. That's okay. Again, we're going to take this now and wrap around everything one more time. In the booklet it says to cut this at a 45-degree angle. The easiest way to do that is to just fold the corner like this and then cut off the little triangle part of it. And that is going to be garbage. Now you have the angled part, and we're going to actually use the angle here as our base as we start to wrap around the tube. What that's going to do is it's going to create a way for this to wrap up and around and move up from the bottom of the tube to completely cover it. So again, using the wet paper towel, I'm going to start at the bottom here where the angle is. The bottom starts along the edge of the tube here at the bottom. And you're going to wrap it around. I recommend that you only do a little bit of the paper at a time so that you can keep a nice tight wrap and then it doesn't get dried out as you're going. You can see that all I'm doing is keeping it nice and tight and it's automatically wrapping at that angle. And so I'm just going to keep going until I get past the end of the white paper. At the bottom here where I started, I'm pretty even with the white paper. At the top, I've actually gone past it. And so now you can slide the tube out, save it, because again, you're going to need it for another project. And I can just finish up this last little bit. And then I'm going to go back with my scissors and I'm going to trim off the extra back down to the white paper. And if I'm careful, I could probably slide that tube back in and just finish up that last little bit so that the tube is supporting it, and then again trim off just that last bit so that it's even with the white paper. And now I have the body of my rocket. In your booklet, there's going to be a bunch of different steps to do. You're going to need to measure up 3 inches from the bottom to put what looks like a little straw on your thing. But in order to get it a nice straight line, the best way to do it is to take your clear tube and the paper tube you just built, lay them next to each other, and then take your pencil and run it along the clear tube and make a line on the paper. I don't know if you'll be able to see it here, but I've got a nice dark line here. And then you're going to take your straw and glue it 3 inches from the bottom, just using the hot glue from the glue gun. Okay? Once you have that on there, you can start thinking about your fins. Okay? And the fins, there's a template here that you can cut out, a pattern that you can cut out on page 15. It's going to be important that you cut out that notch. And so I'm going to cut this out. And after I cut it out, I'm going to trace it onto the white piece of cardboard that came in your kit. And the white piece of cardboard is big enough to make 3 fins if you lay it out correctly. If you do not lay this out correctly, you will not be able to get all 3 fins cut the right way, and then it's going to affect the way your rocket is built. So here's my fin pattern. This is the fin material, this white piece of cardstock or thick cardboard paper stuff. And you want to lay this out the way it shows on the booklet. If you don't lay it out correctly, you'll run out of space. You won't be able to get all 3. So before you trace and then cut out and then trace and cut out, I would recommend tracing all 3 patterns first. Make sure they all fit, and then cut your 3 fins once they've been marked. So I'm going to lay this out here. I'm going to mark the first one. I'm going to flip it, mark a second one, and if I do that correctly, there should be enough for the third one. So using a pencil, I line up my 2 edges, and then I'm going to trace that fin, and I'm trying to do it pretty dark, so hopefully you'll be able to see it. So the first one, and I'm going to label it 1, is done. Then I have to flip this around so that what was the top angle is going to be the top angle again. And I use that same top line, and so now all I have to do is trace the V cutout and then trace the bottom of the fin. The bottom of the fin is the part that has the short flat piece. If I label that number 2, I now have 2 of them. And so with the remaining, I can go all the way back down to the bottom and draw off that last fin. This allows me to make sure that I have all 3 of those fins before I start cutting. Okay? So make sure you can get all 3 of them before you start doing any of the cutting of that cardboard, because if you don't, there's a chance you may not have enough. Okay? Now, I'm just going to go through, I'm going to cut these out with the scissors. I'm cutting out those notches because that's going to remind me later when I put this onto the body of the rocket which side goes to the rocket. And the side that has the little notch is the side that's going to actually get glued to your rocket frame, okay, to the tube. And as you can see here, I'm just about done with cutting out these fins, and there is very, very little scrap that's left when I'm done cutting out my 3 fins. And if I lay my 3 fins together, I have 3 identical fins. In the booklet, it talks about using one of these fin holders. I did not have enough for everybody to take one home. So Mr. Pancari and I actually figured out a way that we could create this using a block of wood and a dowel rod. And so we've given you guys these in place of the blue one. and it should work just as well as the blue one. This again, you're going to need for a different project, so make sure you are not damaging it in any way, because for the next project you'll need this and that clear tube that became part of the rocket kit. So once I have this, I can take my tube that I created, slide that on there, and making sure that the flat part is on the bottom and that little notch is against the side of your rocket, you can fit these into the grooves from the corners, and it will help you line up where the fins go. Make sure that when you hot glue those on, and I would recommend using the hot glue, that you put it along both sides of the fin where it meets the red tube. Put it on pretty thick so that those fins aren't likely to break off. And at this point it doesn't really matter if you cover up and kind of fill that gap where that V-notch is. The V-notch was just there so that we knew that that was the side that went against the tube, so that you weren't putting your fins on upside down. We didn't want your fins to go on upside down. Okay? Once you have that glued and you have your straw attached, you're ready to go on to some of the other parts. One of the next parts that you're going to do is build this little engine lock. It has a cardboard tube, 2 cardboard rings, and a metal hook on here. And the best way to glue this together is just with some liquid Elmer's glue if you have it. If you don't have it, the hot glue gun around here will work just fine. But we want to hook that metal clip over the edge. It's kind of bent on both ends. So one end gets glued tight, and then we slide that ring on, and it says to leave about 3/8 of an inch at the one end. When you slide the other one on, we want about 1 inch from the end so that it allows for this thing to flex a little bit. The metal piece is what locks the engine into your rocket so that when it takes off, that engine doesn't fall out and your rocket doesn't go up in the air. So when you build this, okay, it's going to go into your rocket after you've glued the fins in. So once you've glued the fins on, this will slide into the bottom, and you want to leave it extended a little bit off the bottom of the rocket. Okay? And that allows you to be able to get the engine in and out when you launch. Okay? Again, make sure that the part of the metal that's hanging off the end of the tube is about 1/4 of an inch below the bottom of the rocket when you glue it all together. And make sure that that bottom ring, when it goes in like this, that bottom ring is a little bit higher so that you're able to flex that bottom enough to get the engine in and out. When you do your parachute, you can see that there are little spots in the corners for you to poke a hole and run the string in. Okay? You probably have one really long piece of string that will need to get cut into smaller pieces. Go ahead and do that, and then you're going to tie each end of one of those strings to the parachute, and the other end will get attached to the little hook, the little screw eye that goes into the bottom of the nose cone. You also have a piece of string that's stretchable. Okay? This is the piece that's called your shock cord. And it may be a wide piece like this one, or it may be a skinnier piece like this one, but it also is going to get put into the nose cone. But the other end of this, instead of getting connected to the parachute, will actually get connected to the inside of the rocket body. To do that, you need to go again to page 15. And above where the fin cutout is, there's a pattern for the shock cord attachment piece. Okay? And so to cut out the anchor for your shock cord, Again, you can just cut it right out of here. You do not need to trace it again. You can just use this piece. There are 2 dotted lines. Do not cut on those. Those are going to be where you're going to fold this piece into a little piece like looks like this. You're going to want to fold it and glue it. Again, if you have the Elmer's glue, it's best. If you don't have it, you can use whatever glue you have at home. If you're using the hot glue, just be very, very careful because we don't want you burning your fingers. So I'm going to take the shot cord and I'm going to take some of the glue. I'm going to glue a little bit here and I'm going to put the shot cord and I'm going to pinch it and fold it along that first line. After I've done that, I'm going to fold the string over again, fold the paper over, and have that glued in there. What that does is it creates a hook in the string. Okay? It's folded over inside and glued in 2 different spots so that it doesn't come loose. And then this part will get attached inside of your rocket, and the loose end of this will get attached to the little screw-eye hook that gets put into the bottom of the nose cone. Okay? So again, if I open this up, I'm going to take just a little bit of the glue. I'm going to squeeze it on the skinny end. And I'm going to take my string, my shot cord, the stretchy string, and I'm going to put it in the glue. And then I'm going to fold it along that first line. Now bending the string back over, I'm going to put some more glue on the back of this and pinch the last one over the top. And now that string can't come out of the paper. Okay? Then this paper piece will go inside the tube and you'll put a little bit more glue in there, slide it in as far as your finger will reach and glue it to the inside of that tube. Okay? To prepare your rocket parachute, before you start poking holes in here, you should have some little eye ring holder sticker things that look like this. Okay? And you can peel these off and you're going to put them onto the corners where you're going to poke the hole. Okay? Those little reinforcing rings are going to keep it so that the parachute doesn't rip as you're tying around that parachute. And then you can cut along the dotted line to get your parachute cut out. Once you have all your strings, each end of the string gets tied into the parachute. The remaining end will all get tied together and go with the bottom of the shot cord, okay, the loose end of the shot cord, and get tied into that little metal screw eye that will get screwed into the inside of the parachute, or inside of the nose cone. Okay? I would recommend once you start getting the knots tied in the parachute and on that little screw eye, if you have some of the Elmer's glue or wood glue, put a little dab on your finger, rub it into the knot that you've created on the parachute and the nose cone, and it'll help that knot from coming undone and your possible parachute coming loose when we fly these. Okay? So when you get it all done, your rocket's going to look something like this. The fin should be attached. You should have the nose cone. The nose cone should be attached with the shot cord and everything else. But you'll have a red, a white, and a yellow rocket. If you want to decorate it in any way, go ahead and do so. If you have spray paint or craft paint or something that you want to paint at home, go ahead. It does not need to be painted. We're not going to grade you on any kind of painting or anything. If we'd have been here in class, I would have let you paint if we were done early. If we're not done early, then we would have just launched them just like this. So if you have the time, if you have the resources to paint it, go ahead and do so. If not, don't worry about it. We're not going to require that kind of thing to happen. So here's a completed rocket. You can see that on the bottom here, the metal piece is hanging out the bottom so that we can put the engine in there. It has the tube right here, the straw, so that it will use the guide when it launches. And then the cord is stuck to the inside here, about as far as the finger can go. Your parachute gets cut and tied, and then the loose ends, everything gets tied to the screw eye that is then twisted into the nose cone. To pack it up, the easiest way to do it is to pinch the center of the parachute, kind of pull it down, fold it in half, carefully tuck it into your completed rocket. Again, push it down, and then take your strings, push those into the rocket. And then carefully slide the nose cone back in. And if we get a chance to launch them this school year, if we're back, it would be awesome to go outside. I've got some engines and igniters and some stuff that we could take them out and launch them either over at Oiler Field or the baseball field if we've got time and weather, and if this whole school closure thing hopefully comes to an end. So good luck with it. Again, just like the Mousetrap car, when you're finished with it, if you'll shoot Mr. Pancari and I an email with a picture of your completed rocket. You can also take pictures, paste them into a Google Doc, post it onto the Google Classroom. That would be fantastic. So good luck with it. Have some fun with it. And I can't wait to see your rockets.